It is now 5:00 p.m. on Monday, June 22nd, 2020. We're going to call the school committee meeting to order. And this is a public hearing on the school committee's proposed fiscal year 2021 budget. As always, we must read beforehand the orders from the state that allows us to meet in this setting. So in accordance with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and his further order on March 23, 2020, prohibiting assemblage of more than 10 people, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. In-person attendance by members of the public is prohibited. However, we will make this meeting available via the city's YouTube channel, as well as our community partner, Malden Television. Public access will also be provided by the draft minutes, and a recording will be posted on the City of Malden website at cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. So why don't we do this first? Let's ensure that we have a quorum before we have the public hearing. So let's have our clerk call the roll.
Mayor Christenson,
Here.
Mr. Drummey.
He's here.
Yeah, okay, he's on mute. Mr. Freud,
Here.
Mr. Gray,
Here.
Mr. Iovino,
Here.
Ms. Luong,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Ms. Spadafora,
Here.
Mr. Weldai,
Here.
Superintendent Oteri.
Here.
All right, so we have a quorum sufficient to meet and hold this public hearing. Before we hear from the public, just from the chair, we do want to make sure that we publicly thank Jennifer Spadafora and all members of the Budget Subcommittee for their hard work and dedication over the past several weeks. I'm sure this is not what they signed up for back in January, but they've handled it professionally, and I know they join me in saying that they could not have done so without the support of our superintendent, our assistant superintendents, and of course our budget director, Tony Mertz. So with that being said, let's find out what the public thinks as to where we are, and I think we all agree that in this year it will probably be changing as we move forward, but if you've shown me anything over the past several months, we will move with whatever comes our way as quickly and as professionally as we can, always with the mind of protecting the classroom. So again, thank you to you all. And now we're going to have Ron Cochran, who we also want to publicly thank for helping us during the past several months with this format of holding hearings. He's going to coordinate and organize tonight's public hearing. So, Mr. Cochran, I think they're signing up, and let's turn it over to you and them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to briefly go over what the ground rules are for public comment. So if you are logged in via the Zoom application, we're asking you to click on the Q&A button and then click Ask Question. And then in the question box that's shown, please enter your full name and home address for the record. And this will give me a time-stamped stamped view of who is queued up for questions. If you are called into the conference by phone only, you can also participate, and that is by hitting *9 on your phone, and that will raise your hand. And when we do get to you, we would announce the last 4 digits of your phone number to confirm and know that you are that your mic is now live. We do, again, have a couple of folks already in the queue, but for those in attendance, if you do want to queue up, please, again, make use of that Q&A feature on the bottom and click Ask Question and indicate your name and your home address for the record. With that, I'd like to go ahead and get who was first in chronological order, and that is Bonnie Littlejohn of 127 Emerald Street. Bonnie, hang on 1 second while I free up your mic. Go right ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Bonnie Littlejohn, 127 Emerald Street. First, I want to just publicly thank Ms. Mertz. I had a few questions today about the budget, and she got right back to me. I like to understand everything, and she got right back to me, so I appreciate that. Thank you. I am addressing all of you today for the children. To begin, I would like to thank everyone involved in the decision-making of the budget. I cannot even imagine the work that is involved to decide what is best for the Malden Public School children. I especially want to thank these individuals for keeping the classroom intact this coming year for the children. It is crucial to keep our class sizes as low as possible for the children. On this note, I would like to address the elimination of the 12 elementary support staff positions throughout the 5 K-8 schools. I have had one of these positions since it was created in January 2016. I completely understand there must be cuts this year, and eliminating this position still allows the classroom to stay intact, which is important for the children. I am in complete agreement to keep the classroom intact. However, in the event more funds come our way before the start of the school year, I respectfully request to the individuals making the decisions on how best to use the additional funds that they strongly consider reinstating the elementary support staff positions throughout the K-8 schools for the children. It may be a small part-time position and a very small portion of the budget, but it holds much value through the eyes of a child. Not to mention giving the children an opportunity to work with another certified and qualified educator in the classroom. I know every one of these positions has not been filled in each school throughout the years, but I would like to make you aware of what this position truly entails from my working experience and how important and valuable this position has been for the children. For the most part, I've spent 45 minutes in each of 4 to 5 first and second grade classrooms per day. Primarily, I am there as a certified educator to support the full-time classroom educator. I provide additional instruction in small groups to help the children who have fallen behind academically and/or to fill in the gaps with the necessary skills to succeed and move forward. When I am in the classroom, children have the opportunity for individualized attention in a small group. These children have thrived from an additional educator who fills the gaps while the rest of the class is on pace, an additional educator to give a second set of eyes to the classroom teacher to notice and acknowledge gaps and deficits, an additional educator in qualified voice who can advocate for the needs of the children, especially ones with deficits that are more challenging to notice in classes with over 20 first or second graders, an additional educator who gives confidence in their ability, an additional educator who praises them, an additional educator who gives emotional support, an additional educator who breaks up the day, which for some of these children can be challenging, an additional educator who listens and acknowledges them, an additional educator who is a constant each day in supporting them, an additional educator who makes them feel special because they get to have the extra attention that day. In closing, I would like to repeat that I agree it is more important to maintain the classroom educator position. But if the funds do become available, I would like to again respectfully request the reinstatement of the elementary support staff positions for the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Littlejohn, and we agree. And that's why the school committee at the outset of this did not outright just cut. Instead, there's been a contingency established in case the numbers aren't as bad as we fear they might be. So, I forgot to mention at the outset, but it's worth pointing out that our controller, Chuck Ranigan, along with Ron Hogan, worked very closely with Tony Mertz to take that approach. And so the one thing that you and others that are here this evening could do to help us is make sure that you're contacting our state and federal delegation as they make their way forward to let them know, just how important these funds are.
Okay. You know I'll do that.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I know. I think I just wasted a few words there, but anybody else that, hasn't, that's here tonight, if they could, please join with us in making the pitch to our state and federal delegations to, help keep us on the path forward. All right. And in the meantime, we do appreciate what you have done, what you are doing, and what you mean to our community. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bonnie. We are next going to go to Ms. Deb Gesualdo, 34 Abington Road in Danvers, also MEA President. Hang on one second, Deb, while I free up your mic. Go right ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Deb Gesualdo, President of the Malden Education Association. I first want to thank you for the hard work that you've put in on this budget. I know creating a school district budget in a time of crisis is not an easy thing. So I do want to thank you for all of the work you've done to try and trim the school budget in a way that will hopefully cause the least harm to our students, schools, and educators. But sadly, as we all know, any cuts to our public schools cause some kind of harm to our students' education and well-being. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the needs of our students will be increasing, and it's crucial that we have more staff, not fewer, in order to support and educate our students properly. We need to return to our school buildings with schools that are fully resourced with all of the adults necessary to reach, teach, inspire, and keep our students safe and healthy. This means we need more teachers, social workers, nurses, education support professionals, staff that serve students in so many different capacities. We as a district must invest in updating our curriculum so that it is an actively anti-racist curriculum that reflects and affirms students of color, as well as their cultures and histories, and helps us fight against all forms of xenophobia. The school district budget must ensure that all students and educators have access to the basic tools of a modern society, a computer and reliable internet access. Support for all families is crucially needed, particularly our multilingual families, to make use of technology as part of students' regular education, and if we are forced to return to crisis learning remotely. To sum up the major things that the community needs from a school budget, we need full funding for our public schools, more staff, not fewer, schools that are safe and healthy for educators, students, and families to return to, a reimagining of curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And finally, we need the school committee, all elected officials, community members, and educators to stand together and collectively say, we will not allow the state to burden our district with more unfunded mandates. We will not allow the state and federal government to continue defunding public education. We will not allow the brunt of this crisis to be borne on the backs of our students, and we will not allow students of color and our immigrant families to be left behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gesualdo. One moment while we get to our next person who's queued up. Okay, next in the queue, we have Michael Berman of 10 Wendell Street in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Hang on one second, Michael. Go ahead, you are all set to talk.
Good evening.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, okay. My name is Michael Berman, and I'm a science teacher at Malden High School. I teach primarily freshmen and sophomores. I also want to thank you for your work for our students during this time, and I cannot imagine how difficult the budget must have been during this time. So I recently learned that the budget is cutting a school adjustment counselor at Malden High School, and I cannot stress enough how important these individuals are to our students' social, emotional, and academic learning. I have countless students who depend on them to get through the day. And in these times, it's even more important that they have access to adults that they trust and that they get the support that they need. And eliminating that position will really take that away from them. So I'll just keep this really short and sweet. I urge you to reconsider that eliminated position because our students will really be harmed by it. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Hang on while I get to our next person in the queue. Okay, next we have Kayla Sheetlin. Hope I'm pronouncing that correct, of 267 Washington Ave in Winthrop. One moment, Kayla. And go ahead, Kayla. You are all set.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Kayla Sheitlin, and my name is difficult to pronounce, so don't worry. But I'm a teacher at Malden High School, and I wanted to say thank you as well, and thank you for hosting these meetings remotely. I know it's not easy to learn new technology. We've definitely learned that as a community. And I know that this was an incredibly difficult year with many unexpected budget concerns. We were expecting a lot of money, and we're not in that shape right now, so thank you. But I'm here tonight to echo Michael's concerns about cutting the school adjustment counselor at the high school. During this closure from COVID-19, we know that our students have been under considerable social and emotional distress. And in addition, there's been considerable civic unrest in response to the racial injustices in our country. And many of our current and former students have been brave in sharing some of their negative racialized experiences in our schools, both to our principal and on social media and to trusted teachers. But I think our school adjustment counselors have been leading our staff community and hearing and supporting our student voices during times of trauma and distress, and especially during this time when they are sharing really charged feelings about the racial experiences that they've had in our school, which has mostly white staff. And so I really think that we need our school adjustment counselors now more than ever, especially as those experiences aren't going to change overnight. I really appreciate Malden High's commitment and Malden Public Schools in general commitment to social emotional support for our students and staff. But I really don't feel that this decision aligns with that commitment or prioritizes the needs of our staff, students or staff. And I'm really concerned that we're not walking the walk with this decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla. One moment. Well, I have one more in the queue so far. Before we get to our next person in the queue, just remind everyone who's listening in or watching via Zoom, the instructions for participating are to click on the Q&A button and then click Ask Question. And then when in the question box, indicate your full name and home address for the record. And if you're in by phone only, once again, it's *9, and that will indicate a raised hand, and we'll go ahead and free up your microphone and announce the last 4 digits of your phone number. And with that, our next person in the queue is Chris Giordano. Chris, hang on 1 second. Go right ahead.
Hi, Chris.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hello?
Go right ahead.
This is Chris Giordano, and I am a high school teacher as well. And I also want to echo the concerns that Michael Berman and Kayla Sheitlin had just brought up about the loss of an adjustment counselor position at the high school. The work that they do is so integral to the daily comings and goings of our students, and the support that they provide that allow the students to access the curriculum that we try to support them with day in and day out. Their position is essential to our student success. The number of conversations that I've had during this remote learning time with my students about the struggles and the difficult time that they were having accessing curriculum and trying to stay on top of their studies during the remote learning and the pandemic. There were so many needs that were going really undermet, and I fear that losing the support that these adjustment counselors provide to our students will only exacerbate the challenges that our students face. And so I really hope, and I thank you all for all the work that you've done to try to maintain the number of teachers in the classroom and try to maintain the number of positions in an extremely difficult time with many budgetary concerns. And I hope that there will be a way to continue to support our students through the addition of more adjustment counselors. And I thank you for your time, and thank you for allowing us to voice these concerns, and best of luck going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you as well.
And I'm sorry, I failed to mention Chris's address for the record was 59 Myrtle Street, MYRTLE, of Everett, Mass.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we do have more in the queue. One moment. Next, we have Elizabeth Gibbons of 278 Beacon Street in Somerville, Mass. Elizabeth, hang on one second, please. And go ahead, Elizabeth.
Good evening.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. My name's Elizabeth Gibbons. I'm also a math teacher at Malden High School, and I also want to thank you guys for the work that you put in on this budget. I know that doing things remotely is really challenging. I'd like to echo my coworkers at the high school in urging you to consider not cutting the school social worker position. Our students need support, as they reacclimate to the classroom. Their lives have been disrupted, their learning has been disrupted, and their social and emotional health has been disrupted. That well-being is just as important as their academic success, if not more important. We have an incredibly large student body, and I think that being in the school every day, us teachers realize how popular our school adjustment counselors are, not just because they're cool people, but because of the support that they provide our students and allow them to access our curriculum and to be in classes. And our students need adults that they trust and adults that they can go to. And cutting this position would be detrimental to our students' well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. As of now, I see no more questions in the queue. I'm going to look for raised hands briefly. I see no raised hands and I see no open questions in the queue.
Okay, and one more time, Shirley, no emails came in, correct?
No.
Okay. All right, so at this point, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn, and then I believe we're taking up the budget later on during tonight's school committee meeting where we can further discuss where we're heading. So with that being said.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I just remind everyone here that at the conclusion, when you do adjourn, please do not exit this call. Just simply mute your audio and your video and you can step away.
Right, okay. Everybody clear on that? So it's the same link. So again, when we get off, just mute and we'll come back at 6 sharp. So motion by Mr. Weldai to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Iovino. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The public hearing on the proposed school committee budget for fiscal year 2021 is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
What? What? You're kidding, right? Forget it. Hello? Hello? Yeah. I know, so it shouldn't come up to vote. Lenny says they have the right to.
You there, John? What's our student rep doing?
Hi, Batu.
Hi.
What happened?
All right, let's call the school committee meeting to order. Today is Monday, June 22nd, 2020. The time is 6:00 p.m. As always, in accordance with Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the governor's further revised order on March 23rd, 2020, prohibiting assemblage of more than 10 people, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. In-person attendance by members of the public is prohibited, but will be shown on the city's YouTube channel as well as Malden Access Television. Public access will also be provided by posting draft minutes and/or a transcript recording a record of the meeting on the City of Malden website at cityofmalden.org as soon as practicable after the meeting. So tonight's agenda is as follows. We have first Pledge of Allegiance. We'll then have a moment of silence for our veterans. Clerk will call the roll. Then we will look to approve our minutes, followed by public comment. Then we'll hear from our superintendent. Then there'll be a subcommittee reports and discussions, motions and resolutions, personal privilege, and then there'll be a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiation. And then we will move adjournment. If there are no questions, I'd ask everyone to please rise and salute our flag.
All right, dude. You got the flag anyway.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag
of
of
the
the United States of America
And to the republic
for
for which it stands, one nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of all those who have fought for our country and continue to do today. Thank you. We'll now have our clerk call the roll.
Mayor Christenson,
Here.
Mr. Drummey,
Here.
Mr. Froyo,
Yeah.
Mr. Gray,
Here.
Mr. Iovino,
Here.
Ms. Luong,
Here.
Mr. McCarthy,
Here.
Ms. Spadafora,
Here.
Mr. Weldai,
Here.
Superintendent Oteri,
Here.
Student Representative Chouiki.
Here.
All right, great. So we have a quorum sufficient to meet. Let's start tackling the agenda. First up is the approval of the minutes. Regular session minutes of June 1st, 2020.
Motion.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. Froyo. Any questions on the regular session minutes from June 1st? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, those carry unanimously. Next up, executive session minutes from June 1st, 2020.
Motion.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Iovino, seconded by Mr. Froyo. Any questions on those minutes?
Point of information.
Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to our clerk for the attendance, it lists business manager Tony Mertz as present. And I know that was a point of contention in executive session last meeting, was that she was not invited, so she was not present. We would have liked to have had her there, but.
Shirley, did you have her not there, or?
No, she's marked as present.
Right. I just want to get Shirley, your version.
I will correct that because she wasn't present.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Weldai, so we'll approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make that motion.
Any objection to that?
No.
All right, hearing none. So to approve the executive session minutes of June 1st, 2020 as amended, All those in favor say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Next up is public comment. Once again, we turn to our Communications Director, Ron Cochran, and say thank you to him for helping us organize this segment of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just once again, we'll go over the process for those listening in via Zoom. You would indicate that you would like to speak by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and then type in your name and your full name and your home address for the record. And we will take you in the order in which we see and that we see that you received. If you're calling in by phone only, you can indicate that you want to speak by pressing *9 on your phone, which will raise your hand. And we'll go ahead and pick out which phone number has raised its hand, confirm with the last 4 digits of your phone number, and then open up your mic. With that said, we do have a couple of folks that have already queued up, and we're going to take them in the order in which they were received. First, we have Deb Gesualdo, 34 Abington Road, Danvers, MEA President. Hang on one second, Deb, while I free up your mic. Go right ahead.
Good evening.
And thank you, before I forget, to Ron for all of his work getting all of these Zooms up and running so that people can participate remotely. It's greatly appreciated. My name is Deb Gesualdo. I'm president of the Malden Education Association. Good evening, Mayor Christenson and members of the Malden School Committee. I think it goes without saying that as a community, we've really faced some hard and tragic times this year. The pandemic and the recent brutal extrajudicial murders of so many Black Americans has laid bare the racism that exists in communities across the United States and the inequities that students and families of color face. Tonight, you have before you a resolution affirming Black Lives Matter on the school committee docket. As a majority white staff in the district and majority white elected leadership who serve a racially and ethnically diverse community, we must not be silent while Black and brown people in our country continue to be treated differently than white people. We must stand up and actively reject racism in all forms. We must ensure that all school employees are provided with ongoing, high-quality anti-racism training. We must take immediate steps toward transformative change by removing the barriers to entry for educators of color. And we must actively work to hire, support, and retain educators of color. These are vital steps toward creating an anti-racist and equitable school district. This evening, you, the elected leaders of the school district, are being called on to pass this resolution because it is time to publicly acknowledge the trauma that has been caused in the United States by a long history of institutional racism, systemic oppression, and white privilege. As a school district, we need to be guided by the belief that every student can and will succeed and have a just future. Recognize that extrajudicial killing of Black people in this country has deep roots in the dehumanizing system of white supremacy culture, and that these tragedies are not new. We need to acknowledge the lasting negative consequences racism and violence have on our community, cities, and nation, and assert over and over again that the lives of Black people matter. We need to bring the community into our schools and strengthen schools as centers of support in our community. And we need to examine curriculum and resources being taught under the Massachusetts state frameworks to make sure that we have culturally responsive, relevant, and appropriate texts, authors, and perspectives that in our work with students. I urge the passage of the resolution affirming Black Lives Matter when it comes up on this evening's docket. Additionally, I urge district leadership to distribute this resolution to all school employees, regardless the position in which they work, and to create an ongoing plan for dismantling racism and oppression in our schools. This resolution is just one step out of many toward creating an anti-racist school district, but it's an important one. If we all name it, claim it, and stop it, when we see and hear hate and bias, we can begin to have a district that creates pathways to freedom and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gesualdo. One moment. Next up, we have Jessica Gould Boots of 3 Amos Terrace in Everett. Hang on one second, Jessica. Go right ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So I am speaking as well in favor of the resolution affirming Black Lives Matter.
We are in a moment that demands our full attention in so many different ways, yet this moment also has a promise for real change. In previous years, when there have been tragic instances of police brutality against Black lives, there were calls for change, but they often went unheeded. This moment feels different. Anti-racism education and professional training are important and vital first steps. What I have learned as a teacher of Black and Brown students is that colorblind education, as well-intentioned as it is, just does not work. When we as educators ignore uncomfortable conversations about race, we send a message loud and clear to our students that we do not see a key component of their identity and themselves. We stifle their expression and their ability to bring their full identity to our classrooms, which perpetuates the racialized opportunity gap and limits our students unnecessarily. This message continues when the teaching force is almost all white and does not include staff of color. When students of color cannot find an educator who looks like them or engaging curriculum that tells and reaffirms their story, they learn a tragic hidden curriculum that tells them that they do not deserve educational attainment and that the status quo is normal and okay. That's just not right. For us to remain silent about the current extrajudicial killing of Black people in this moment is to remain complicit with a cruel and vicious system. We must be complicit no more. Today's resolution is an important first but not only step towards an anti-racist Malden. This resolution must be accompanied by critical equity work enumerated in the resolution to create a culturally responsive anti-racist curriculum and to actively recruit, welcome, and most importantly, retain quality educators of color in the Malden Public Schools. Please make this commitment today. Our students deserve no less, and the moment is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Next, we have Laura Gould of 480 Main Street of Malden. Laura, hang on one second. Laura, go ahead.
Good evening.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, I'll be brief. Despite being the most diverse high school in Massachusetts, our Malden High students and faculty have made it clear that we still have work to do. We need to put our time and resources towards anti-racist work in order to best serve all of our students and staff, particularly those who are Black and Brown, and intentionally create a Malden school system that affirms and welcomes every student's identity. I ask that the Malden School Committee adopt the Black Lives Matter resolution as a first step towards clearly setting our intentions towards building a district committed to anti-racism and building a system that is equitable for all of our students, including our most marginalized. This is not the end of the work, merely the beginning, but would send a strong message to our community where Malden stands regarding racial equity and inclusion and set the tone for the work to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more in the queue so far. Next, we have Kayla Sheitlin of 267 Washington Ave in Winthrop. Kayla, go ahead.
Hello again. I'm Kayla Sheitlin, a teacher at Malden High, and I'd like to echo the comments of Laura, Jess, and Deb. I'd like to voice my support for the Black Lives Matter resolution that you are voting on tonight as a first step towards making our schools more inclusive and equitable for our students and staff. Your policy decisions can lead us in the right direction, and I want to assure you that there are educators who are ready to do this work with you. I've been leading a book club focused on equity and racism in our society for the last 3 years, and recently many of the educators have felt a call to action, and we've been doing some grassroots things, and so you can lead us with this policy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kayla? I'm just going to scan to see if there are any callers that have indicated they'd like to speak, but so far no more in the queue for the Q&A section.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Cochran. So we'll close that portion of our meeting, and we'll now drop down to the superintendent's report, which is item number 3 on the agenda. Superintendent O'Teary.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. First item on my report is the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education guidelines on reopening of schools. We were expecting the guidelines to be released around June 15th. That did not happen. We expected them towards the end of last week. We had a meeting with the commissioner, and guidelines should be coming out sometime this week, possibly as early as tomorrow, but certainly by the end of the week. There's probably going to be two sets of guidelines around the reopening of schools. There'll be one coming out hopefully this week, and then a second set of guidelines sometime around the early part of July. We really don't know much about what will be in them. I think that the department and the state are doing everything they can to have a reopening of schools in the fall, but we don't know what that will look like. As we have been well aware, we're sort of at the mercy of the path of the virus and where it is in terms of the key markers that they're following, but we hopefully will have something coming in the next couple days. I had hoped to have something for the committee tonight. We expected them last week, but we do not have that, but I will certainly keep the committee abreast of any changes that come with the department's and state guidelines on this. We do have a reentry task force meeting tomorrow. I had postponed it from the week previous because we wanted to have the guidelines there to digest, but we'll adapt and go from whatever release of these guidelines the state gives us. I think we all know that this is unprecedented territory. Patience is certainly something that we're all we need, but this is such an important undertaking that's we have never done around here, and we're looking. The state is looking and analyzing the most recent medical trends, the most recent research, and I feel confident that the recommendations will be ones that put safety and getting our students back into school at the forefront. But I will keep you up to date on that. Next item I had was the Title IX changes. There's the new law will take effect in August 14th specifically. This will require some training and updating of our handbooks, and I know Attorney Greenspan is here, and perhaps he can add some to this after I speak, but I recommend that we refer this to our Policy and Procedures Subcommittee to review for the school handbooks for Malden High School, our K-8, our athletics and after-school programs, that we adhere to this requirement. I also want to note that these new changes in the law, Massachusetts is one of the 17 states or 18 states, I'm not sure which one it is, that are challenging this ruling because they feel that it in some way weakens the protections for sexual assault and harassment survivors. And Attorney General Maura Healey is one of the Attorney Generals who is challenging this ruling. But we do need to have some training on this going forward. Mr. Greenspan and I have contacted a person who does training on Title IX, and we're working out some of the logistical details. And I don't know if Mr. Greenspan wants to weigh in now or has anything to add.
Soup, we'll hold it to the end.
Okay. We have a request for a sabbatical leave from a Malden High School English teacher, Robin Doherty, for paid sabbatical leave for purposes of finishing her advanced degree. On Thursday, June 11th, 9:15, a committee of Malden educators and administrators came together to discuss the leave, which is attached in your packet. The committee was our Director of Human Resources, Ashley Pierre, Ms. Deb Giswaldo, President of the Malden Education Association, Dr. Kelly Chase, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, Ms. Pam Skinner, who is a Vice President of the Malden Education Association, and myself. We went through her request for leave, and by a vote of 3-2, the recommendation was to not grant that. To give some context to this, we were, unfortunately, Attorney Greenspan had given us some misinformation, misguidance on this, and we worked out the details to redo this with the Malden Education Association to be brought forward to the committee tonight for their final approval. I think Mr. Greenspan's interpretation was that the language in the contract predated ed reform and was outdated and not applicable. Unfortunately, it was still there, so we did a redo effectively with the MEA and held the meeting and have brought it forward to the committee for tonight for their discussion. Moving on to my report, under diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'd like to take time to talk about a march that took place on Friday, March 5th, Black Lives Matter March. Without a doubt, I found this to be the most impressive and moving event I've ever experienced in Malden. This was led by our students and represented what a peaceful and respectful protest should be on every level. We marched from Malden High School, the steps of Jenkins Auditorium, to Lincoln Commons, where we had speeches, music, and performances. This student-led and student organization was terrific. They met with Principal Chris Mastrangelo, who was incredibly supportive from the beginning. He kept me apprised of all the details of this. They met with Police Chief Kevin Molis and had the support of Mayor Christenson in his office. I cannot really adequately express how impressive these students are and the profound impact it had on me. I was moved to tears at several times during the speeches. They represented very heartfelt and courageous words of what our young people of color experience on a daily basis in Malden and outside of Malden on a national level as well. We were really quite moved by this as an administrative team. We brought in Dr. Denise Armante Jackson to meet with our leadership team on Thursday, June 11th, where we had an infinity group meeting with all of our leadership team, a cohort of, and then prior to that, there was a meeting with the cohort of teacher leaders that she has been working with during this school year. We will continue meeting with Dr. Armante Jackson. Dr. Chase and I have a meeting with her tomorrow morning to continue our work on making the Malden Public Schools anti-racist, a more welcoming place that embraces the diversity that is equitable and inclusive to foster belonging for all of our students, families, and staff. This is a commitment that I have been very steadfast in from the beginning, whether it was increasing the diversity in our teaching staff, as I had mentioned in my initial interview 3 years ago, that I was committed to that we need to have a teaching staff that reflects our student body. We've begun to make big strides in that, and we will continue to. And that will be our commitment to service the best needs, the best we can of our needs of our students. And I believe that some of the proposals and actions that are before the school committee tonight are only going to strengthen that resolve and make it a more concerted and united effort. And I applaud the committee in advance for that. Our reentry and long-term planning, we have a few new members, including Ms. Doherty, Ms. Motley, who's representing social work and school adjustment counselors, as well as our food service, assistant food service director, Caitlin Filto. As I mentioned, we have our meeting tomorrow. Part of what we will be doing, we'll be conducting a couple of surveys once the school year is concluded, which it ended today, to our to our families and staff. Some of the things that we do need to ascertain over the summer per the direction of the state is how many families will be returning to school. I think once the guidelines are out, parents will have an understanding of what school in general terms will look like. But in the absence of a cure or a vaccine, we know that we have families who their students have medical conditions. They may be immune compromised. They may feel uncomfortable with that. There is in all likelihood going to be some form of a remote learning option potentially. That seems to be something that will be in the offing, but I don't know for certain, so I would not commit to that. What the state has directed us is to not conduct the survey until the final guidance comes out sometime in early July, so that parents have more time to digest this and see what it is that we're looking at around distancing, what the requirements would be, whether there be masks or not. We're all waiting to hear that, but I wanted to bring the committee up to speed on that. I suspect that this will be something that we'll be updating the school committee on regularly throughout the summer, because this is a continually changing target in some ways. But we're not quite sure what it will look like. We know what it looks like now in June, but it may look totally different at the end of July or the beginning of August. In order to support our students during our remote learning time, we deployed, as I had mentioned in our last meeting, over 1,300 Chromebooks to our pre-K to 8 students during our remote learning, in addition to the over 1,600 devices that were already in our high school students' hands. To ensure students currently in grades pre-K through 11 have access to online summer enrichment activities, families will keep their Chromebooks through the month of July. We also provided over 125 hotspots and have some left over for the upcoming school year. The other day, I think it was yesterday, in my Connect Ed call, I relayed the message that we had sent out earlier in the school year around the package or offer that Comcast had, which includes 60 days of free internet. They're extending that offer through the school, through the calendar year until the end of December. And they have waived some of their requirements, which I think included that you could not have been a previous customer with an outstanding balance. If you are interested in this, as I directed, you can go to the Malden Public Schools website, www.maldenps.org, or go to Comcast to sign up. But again, that is through the end of December. We'll be sending out some more information later on the year around later this summer around the collection of Chromebooks, so that they can be inventoried, updated, and refurbished. Our summer programming has been announced to our school community. It's posted on the website. As you may recall from the meeting a couple weeks ago, with the exception of some of the extended school year services, all of our programming will be done remotely. We will be working with the recently released DESE guidelines around summer learning to ensure that we'll maintain a safe environment for all our students and staff. As of now, registration is a little slow. Some of it may be attributed to screen fatigue, excuse me, as we believe many of our families and students are tired of the screen and online learning, and summer sometimes affords people an opportunity to get a break from screen time and be outdoors. But we'll continue to monitor that. It's also, school just ended on Friday, so it's a little early to predict what that will look like, but it's a little slower than we expected. Our summer reading lists are available on the school website. There's a plethora of resources and reading options for our students. In addition, the Malden Public Library has many fabulous resources for our students. In addition to the summer reading, they can now, with books easily accessible, to offer a variety of remote learning opportunities for students during the summer months. These opportunities are free and range from virtual camps to college exploration. Descriptions and registrations are on our website. Teachers will be giving out summer reading assignments to the students during the month of June. And although we've altered some of the systems and expectations to make sure we account for what students may face during this uncertain summer, we are working with our K-8 and high school librarians, as well as the Malden Public Library, to ensure that the access to assigned reading materials is available. Librarians have been working to identify free ebook and audiobook versions of text, and the public library will be gathering up materials for summer reading to make sure our students have equitable access. The assignments will be posted on the website as well as on the Malden Public Library, and will translate into all languages we usually translate to communicate with families. Summer reading assignments will not be due until the end of the first marking period. That's a switch. Students will have the opportunity to complete the assignment at any point during September or October if they are unable to complete it over the summer. The assignment will not count as a major grade, and if students are having trouble completing it, they can speak with their teachers in the fall, and should circumstances dictate, allow the students an alternative assignment or skip it altogether. Ultimately, we really want students to read over the summer, but we also recognize that sticking to a stricter summer reading program is not possible given the current circumstances. The CARES Act, we are currently working with our application on the fiscal year 21 CARES Act. which is due June 30th. Tony Mertz and Dr. Chase are taking the lead on this. As I mentioned in the last meeting, we'll be targeting the purchase of PPE for mass sanitation equipment and possibly thermometers, as well as other necessary PPE, and purchasing additional Chromebooks in the event that we are in a remote learning phase or we have to go out on remote learning during the school year again. The law lists 12 allowable uses for the $13.2 billion package of K-12 relief fund, and among other things, includes response efforts of schools with state and local health departments, activities to address the needs of low-income students, children with disability, English learners, ethnic minorities, homeless students, and foster care youth, training for staff on sanitation and minimizing the spread of infectious diseases, purchasing supplies to sanitize and clean school facilities, providing meals, purchasing technology for online learning, and providing other educational opportunities, as well as providing mental health services and support. As I had mentioned the last time, this money is used to supplement, it cannot supplant. So it cannot be put into the regular operating budget to fund salaries of staff, but we can use it for some of these other endeavors that would supplement some of the work that we're already doing. I wanted to give the committee an update on kindergarten registration. With the PIC closed, and I've spoken with Chris Webb, our public health director. He is looking at possibly opening the Parent Information Center during phase 3, which would sometime be in early July. I think July 6th is when it would begin. We also are setting up a meeting with him to walk through how the PIC would open and what would be the most prudent and safe way to bring families in. We have to do testing there for our English learner students at a minimum. So right now, typically kindergarten begins placement around July 5th, but in the absence of the English learner testing that has to take place, this placement will be a bit delayed. We need to be able to place our English learner students, but we need to do the screening. We also have a few unknowns. We're not sure what parents will be sending their kids into kindergarten or not, so that's sort of another piece that we will be examining during the summer. So what I'm informing the committee is this process will take a little longer this year. I don't think that should be a surprise to anybody as we are doing this virtually, but in the absence of the Parent Information Center being opened and allowable for our English learner testing that needs to take place. So at this point, we have about 300 total kindergarten registrations. 155 of them are all set, meaning that they have the proper medical clearance and everything else, but 72 of those 155 need the EL testing. So we need to get that done before we can start placing. And just as a way of reminder, we have one SEI kindergarten class at the BB, 25 slots reserved for that, one at the Ferryway School with 25 slots, and then the rest of our SEI kindergarten classes are Salemwood. So we hope by July 5th that we get some information around some guidance and direction from this, and I will keep the committee apprised of that as well. Excuse me. We have some other grants. Dr. Chase, I think, is going to run out of ink in her pens because she has been working nonstop, and I can't thank Kelly enough for the amount of work that she does, the volume of it, but the quality. She has been, the grants have fallen primarily on her shoulders, and I think the committee needs to be aware of that as well as the public. She's done an amazing job. Right now, she's in the process of finalizing the Bar Foundation grant for the upcoming school year, as well as I think she just submitted the social emotional grant. We have the McKinney-Vento grant that's, I think, due at the end of this month as well, and a few other grants that we'll be watching. We're looking forward, at some point in the future, we need to, and I think we had started to prior to going out in the pandemic, of setting up a school committee meeting to digest some of the work that has the Bar Foundation's findings. I know that we were attempting to set that up sometime in early March, and then the pandemic came, but I think that we want to put that back on the school committee's radar. Perhaps we do something over the summer or early fall to go over it, because I think it has some major impact on the direction and the scope of the work that we look to do over the next several years. We have some professional development coming up for our principals through TNTP, the New Teacher Project. That will be a partnership with the 5-district partnership. That's with Chelsea, Everett, Revere, and Winthrop. Principals, we're doing several 90-minute virtual classes over the summer with TNTP. It will help with work towards the vision and strategy for reentry. It's grounded in how identity and bias impact our student and teacher experiences. So there will be, as I said, live 90-minute sessions, virtual, that will provide the districts a community of learning, which we think is very important for our principals to have a network beyond just Malden, so that they can network with some of their partners in neighboring communities who have similar populations. This will help address the social and emotional needs of our school community, engage families, and communicate plans with community stakeholders and assess their instructional resources and tools. We are excited about this opportunity to have a shared professional development with the 5-district partnership run by TNTP. Their training is led by former principals and provides needed practical professional development without burdening our principals with a graduate course with additional work. That was when we were looking at the potential options for this work, that became very prominent with the superintendents, that we did not want to make this so it was a graduate course where there was a tremendous amount of expectation. And we think that TNTP, and we've had a great experience with them for the last couple of years, really offered the best learning opportunity for our principals. It really was like coaching and mentoring. And again, as I said, that they'll be developing collegial relationships with their counterparts in Everett, Revere, Chelsea, and Winthrop, which in these times I think is especially important. Professional development for teachers. Today was our last day for our staff. We held virtual professional developments from 9 to noon. We worked to design a program that was meaningful, flexible, and easy to complete. We held a number of remote sessions that fall into the following themes: social emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion, technology, and reentry. There are multiple offerings under each topic, and most of these educators, there are a very small number of exceptions, chose 2 one-hour sessions followed by a wrap-up at the building level. Following the sessions, there was a simple Google form to complete so that we can document their participation. Professional development over the summer. We've a tremendous amount of interest in staff doing curriculum work over the summer. At this point, we have 88 staff who've expressed an interest in this, which is remarkable. It's been the biggest outpouring of support since we've been doing curriculum work. Now that we have a list of folks interested in helping out, we're working behind the scenes to secure funding. As funding is identified, we'll prioritize the projects that need to be done and reach out to those who expressed interest in that particular area. We hope to begin this after July 1st. An update on Eureka Math. We're excited to move ahead with Eureka Math in grades 3, 4, and 5 for the 2021 school year as part of our expanded pilot. The materials will include online access, which is very much in line with remote learning. We learned that towards 3 to 5, we leaned towards grades 3 to 5 because students in these grade levels are more likely to jump in independently to online learning when it becomes necessary, and teachers of the younger students will be able to focus more on the transition piece. Teachers who piloted the materials this year will be able to continue with the program. Once we get settled into the new year, and if all goes well with phase 2, we'll begin to plan for the next steps. We have a little window of opportunity to offer the Eureka training before this year end, and trainers from the company are available. As a result of our schedule, it is necessary to conduct the training in 2 virtual sessions. The first took place on Friday, and the second took place today. All grades 3 to 5 teachers responsible for math instruction, including teachers of EL and special ed, had spots in this training. We will continue to update you on this. ST Math, as I mentioned at our last meeting, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education approached us about a free opportunity to take part in a unique math program called ST Math. It's called Spatial Temporal Math. It's run by Mind nonprofit called Mind Research Institute, which works to ensure that all students are mathematically equipped to solve the world's most challenging problems. It is a pre-K to 8 visual instructional math program that leverages the brain's unique spatial temporal reasoning to solve math problems. It's especially helpful for our English learner students as the program is not very language dependent. We put in the application for the grant, but we did not get it. However, we did receive a free trial offer of ST Math without the requirements and burdens that the grant had. So we will be using ST Math in our K-8s as a supplemental program. So in many ways, we think this is a better option. I want to get back to, I'm going to take a little out of order. Malden High School graduation, we received approval from Board of Health Director Chris Webb regarding the Malden High School graduation, which will be held this year on Monday evening, August 3rd at 6 p.m. outdoors at McDonald Stadium. It'll be greatly modified from years past. Most notably, there will be only 2 tickets per graduate at this point. We will need to observe all social distancing guidelines, and graduates will be spread out on the field 6 feet apart. Families in the stands will be spread out as well. All people will need to wear masks, and there will be hand sanitizer available. The stage will be very small with a very limited number of people on it. I also want to caution people that this is subject to change based on the trajectory of the virus and the current level of safety at the time of graduation. As of now, the critical markers are good in the area, and we are expecting to have graduation. But again, we need to be cautious and make sure that safety is the most important aspect of this. Mr. Mastrangelo and myself will be in constant communication with the class of 2020 and keep the community informed and updated as we approach August 3rd. Juneteenth celebration. On Friday, June 19th, City of Malden celebrated a commemoration of Juneteenth, the oldest known celebration for the abolition of slavery in the United States, which was held on Friday, June 19th in 1865, when Union soldiers arrived in Galveston, Texas, with news that the Civil War had ended and enslaved people were free. At our celebration on Friday, the keynote speaker was principal of Ferryway School, Mr. Abdel Sepulveda, who delivered an incredibly moving and powerful speech that really, I think, summed up, and he is a real leader in this district in the field of equity and working with all families. And I want to publicly commend Mr. Sepulveda because I think it was the highlight of the ceremony. He just was very inspiring, which is not surprising. That's exactly what he does in his daily work at the Ferryway, and particularly his commitment to being anti-racist, fostering a welcoming and accepting school for all students. And he reflected that in his speech. Also, lastly, it is with bittersweet announcement. It is a bittersweet announcement that I give you the retirement of Ron Janowitz. Mr. Janowitz has been the Pathways Program Director for many years and will be an incredibly difficult act to follow. He's synonymous with the Pathways Program. He has been in the Malden Public Schools for 38 years, and his dedication, patience, and passion for our students has been nothing short of inspiring. Personally, in my 30 years in the field, Ron is one of the top 2 or 3 people I have ever met and have worked with students to the level of effectiveness that he has. He is, in every sense of the word, an angel on earth, doing wonderful things with some of our most vulnerable and at-risk students. He does it easily because it is who he is. He's someone who leads with his heart and treats all students not just with dignity and respect, but with a smile. In honor of this, there has been a request to me to rename the pathway programs after Ron Janowitz. We would like to forward this to the Policy and Procedure Subcommittee to examine this and then hopefully bring it back at the next meeting in the fall with an approval to rename the program after Ron Janowitz. We'd like to hold a dedication ceremony for Ron in the fall, hopefully in person, and officially reopen the program after the man whose heart and soul are all over the program. Prior to the pandemic, the Bar Foundation of Malden High School had begun a study on the Pathways program. In the spring, they made a recommendation that the Pathways program should be a separate house at Malden High School with their own house principal. We would like to bring this to the committee in the fall and use the fall and winter to examine their findings and discuss this as a possibility. We'll be posting the position for Ron's director position as a one-year interim while we study the pros and cons of making it a house principal position. At this time, if I could call Principal Chris Mastrangelo up to say a few words about Ron Janowitz.
Good evening, thank you.
Good evening.
You know, in trying to collect my thoughts about what I wanted to say about Ron, and I'm not a write down and read type of person, but I have so many thoughts and emotions that I actually went against myself tonight and wrote down, and I hope you indulge me and allow me to read the letter that I had actually forwarded to Mr. Otero with my request. So with that, I would say it's with tremendous honor that I write this letter about Ron Janowitz. Mr. Janowitz started his career in the Malden Public Schools in 1982 after 4 years of teaching special education in New Hampshire. He was hired to design and develop the Malden High School Alternative Program. After 10 years of leading the program, he moved on to create the Transitions Program at Malden High School, which he ran successfully until 2010. This is when we created the Pathways Program at Malden High School. There was no doubt who the right person was to build this program. This was a progressive concept that was designed to create an alternative pathway to success. Mr. Janowitz molded the program to best fit each of the students. Within a couple of years, it was a model for the state, with teams visiting us from as far away as Springfield to observe what we have developed. Over his 42 years in education, he's been a champion for all students, particularly students who have had significant roadblocks in their lives. Mr. J, as he's affectionately known, would do whatever it took to see the kids were successful. He would meet them in their houses, a library, a coffee shop, or at times even in their hospital. He created after-school hours to meet the needs of his kids. His positive outlook on life is contagious. His genuine care for his students is evident. During his time at Malden, he has worked with thousands of students. He remembers their names, their stories, their disappointments, and their accomplishments. Countless numbers of students have earned their diplomas because of his efforts and support. He has served as a mentor for all students, teachers, and even a few administrators, one of which is speaking right now. Beyond that, he has served as an inspiration. He is what a teacher is supposed to be. For these reasons and many others, I can think of no better tribute than to officially rename the Pathways program to the Ron Janowitz House. His name should be a reminder to all that enter Malden High School of what the concept of educating the whole child should be. Simply put, he's irreplaceable. As the principal of Malden High School, I take great pride in putting this request in front of the committee. And please know that I do this not just for myself, but the thousands of Malden students and staff that he has influenced over his 38 years in the district. I will miss him as a colleague. I will miss him as a mentor. But more than everything, I think I'll miss our morning meetings before anybody else gets there, sharing a cup of coffee to talk about what the day will bring. I thank you for allowing me to read this. I think that Mr. Janowitz is actually watching right now. This is great respect that I pass this off to the committee, and hopefully when we come back in August and we get it to the subcommittee, we can move forward. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Superintendent, does that complete your report?
Just to conclude my report, I just want to say that this school year has posed many challenges to the entire community. However, the resilience and cooperation by our students, our staff, all of our teachers, administrators, city officials, our families, and the entire community was inspiring and heartwarming. Even though many of our normal end of the school year activities were canceled, all of our schools were able to hold some form of celebration for the students who are graduating or moving on to the next step. We are happy to announce that the free breakfast and lunch program will be available throughout the summer. That will continue the same two places, Malden High School and the Salem Wood School, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. The only change is that on Friday, you can pick up meals for the weekend. That's a little bit different, and we're excited to bring that to folks as well. I did announce that to the community through a Connect Ed call on Friday. We will continue to be in touch with students, families, and the staff throughout the summer to inform them of any updates we receive from state and local authorities. And I want to wish everybody a safe and happy summer. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. All right, let's get to it. Let's hold the sabbatical and Title IX for now. Let's ask any questions other than those two areas for now. Let's go to Mr. Gray first. Questions of our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That was a great report. I just have one piece of clarification concerning graduation. Do the Board of Health guidelines allow for school committee members to attend graduation on August 3rd? That's not clear right now.
At this point, it's a limited stage of, I believe, the mayor, myself, and Principal Mastrangelo, but that could change as restrictions come lessen or increase. But at this point, the recommendation from the Board of Health was a limited stage.
Okay, that's good. If anything changes, I would really like to be there. Thank you.
I think you'll be there as a parent, right?
That's kind of tough when we only get 2 tickets and my mother wants to be there too.
All right. Write that down, Mr. O'Terry. All right, thank you, Mr. Gray. Other questions from the committee? Let's go to Mr. Weldai, then Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I would second what Joe just said and say that if we are able to allow school committee members on stage, I think Joe should be the one to represent us because he's got a particular tie to this year's class. So I would be more than happy to have Joe sitting up there representing us.
Right.
My question was, do you want us to make I think Chris's tribute was really heartfelt and wonderful. I think what you said was heartfelt and wonderful. I don't think anybody could say any more about the amazing educator that Mr. J is. Are you looking for a motion to send that to policy so we can quickly dispense of it and bring it back for the fall?
Yeah, I think that would be terrific. You can note on that when I grow up, I want to be Ron Janowitz.
I think there's probably something, I'm sure Mr. J deep down kind of appreciates a global pandemic distracting everyone from publicly celebrating him as much as we probably would have been towards the end of this year. But it'll be nice that we can hopefully do something for him in the fall and bring him back.
Yeah, that would be terrific, and you can get that to policy.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to make a motion now or save it till later?
Make it now.
I'll make a motion that we send the renaming of the Pathways program to be the Ron Janowitz House to
Second.
policy.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Iovino. Everybody clear on that? Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add, if Joe is going to represent us up there, let's make sure Michelle's up there as well, as she has a graduating senior. So,
Michelle, I am so sorry.
Yeah. I see. It's always the man first.
So my question to the superintendent is just in regards to the CARES Act. I know we were talking dollar amounts, and we knew what Malden was receiving and as a total, and I don't have the figure in front of me. Maybe it was 1.8 million. But and I see Ms. Mertz may be on, so she may be able to answer this. Do we know how much Malden public is getting, just because I know that that total amount has to be shared with, the private schools in Malden and so on and so forth. So just curious, do we know what that dollar amount is?
I think we're getting the Malden district is getting 1.8. And I believe that about 400 of that goes to the 2 private schools, but Tony probably has that exact figure. I want to say about 200,000 each school, but I'm not 100% certain. We should see somewhere around 1.3 or 1.4 million. If Tony might be able to clarify that.
Right now, we have about just over 200,000 going to the private schools, so we would land closer to the 1.6 for Malden Public Schools.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Other questions? If I might, just from the chair superintendent. So when it comes to graduation, do we have a backup date just in case on the weather end?
I believe it's the next day. I think that's what Chris Webb and Chris Mastrangelo have worked out. It would be the following day.
Okay, and we are going to live stream it? Superintendent?
I'm sorry, I missed that. My internet is freezing. I'm getting a strange message. I missed that follow-up.
I presume we will live stream it?
Oh, yes. With we would put it on Malden. MATV usually does this as well.
Okay. On the professional development day today, how many participated?
I don't have the exact number, but it would be the entire Unit A, all of our teaching staff.
And do you have a breakdown by how many participate in each subject matter?
Yeah, I believe we track that. Yes.
Yeah. Can you forward that to me?
Sure. We can look at that. Yep.
Okay. On
the application goes in the end of this month, and I think it's a fairly short turnaround.
Sometime in July?
Yes, is my expectation. I don't know for certain.
Okay. Coming back to school, students who can't, what happens?
We have been under the, I think, impression from the state that they're aware that there will be a certain percentage of students who cannot return because of, they're medically compromised, or the families are just uncomfortable because there may be a medical condition at home. So we're fairly certain that there will be some remote component to this, that students will be allowed to, learn remotely, because if they, in the absence of a cure, they would not be able to return. So we're working on that.
Dr. Jackson, how many teachers are in that cohort that you mentioned?
14, I think. It's about 2 per building, roughly.
Okay. Final question. When it comes to the guidelines that you mentioned first, so is there going to be flexibility in how the district determines what's the best way to come back? And that's why they're called guidelines? Or is the state, do you think, going to be heavy-handed here in what we have to do step by step, day by day?
I think it's going to be a combination. I think there's going to be part of it that will be a mandate, and part that will be left to the district to determine its best path. For instance, if you're a district that there's a high percentage of infected resident students, or if you're one that doesn't have any, so a rural community out in Western Massachusetts, you may have more flexibility of your in-person learning than, say, Chelsea does, because they're the highest rate in the state. But that question was asked the other day, and is it going to be a mandate, or will it be something we can interpret? The guideline that the commissioner has used is about 85 to 90% of what is in it you're going to have to follow. So I think it's going to be more of a mandate because of the public safety, public health interest in it.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Superintendent. So now let's get to Title. Do you need us to act on Title IX tonight? Or refer it?
I think it needs to be referred, but I saw Mr. Greenspan just chimed in. I don't believe there's any action, just wanted to make you aware of it, that I think we're gonna have to, as a result of it, update our handbooks. Howard, if you wanna add something to that.
Mr. Greenspan?
Oh, dear.
I think we may want to refer that to policy subcommittee also.
Okay. So, Mr. Weldai, do you want to make that motion so we can get a look at this? You're on mute, Mr. Weldai, I think. There you go.
Sure. So are we referring, just what's the verbiage that I should?
Yeah, Mr. Greenspan, how should we word it?
Refer the Title IX updated federal regulations to policy subcommittee.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So, Mr. Weldai, you're moving it, seconded by Mr. McCarthy. So everybody clear on that?
Yep.
I don't see any questions. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to that? That carries unanimously. So now the other piece of business we need to act on is the sabbatical, right, Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes.
Okay. I think everybody got the information in the packet. What say you? Any questions, queries, qualms, concerns? This is a motion to approve or not, right, Superintendent? All right, Ms. Spadafora.
There we go. So just a few questions on the request, and thank you, Superintendent, for highlighting kind of the miscommunication that happened with this. I'm just curious as to why this came in April and it was only met on June 11th. That's 2 months after the request came in. That seems like, I mean, I know we've all been busy dealing with a pandemic, but to be quite frank, we're all working from home. We're all making do. We're getting the job done. So why did it take 2 months for us to actually look at this request?
All right, Soup, what say you?
So we actually looked at it earlier. That was where we had taken the inappropriate action on this. I think part of the issue was this is the first time in anybody's memory we've ever had a request for a sabbatical. Mr. Greenspan's been with the district for over 20 years, and he's unaware of anyone that has come in either. I think that's why he had said that the language was archaic and predated ed reform, and so I think that was part of it. But we had met, I believe, in May around this, and took
who met in May? I'm sorry.
That was with our administrative cabinet team.
Okay, so not the list of folks that you have that
Correct.
you sent out. So
Once we received the right guidance, we convened the appropriate team and cleared this with the Malden Education Association.
okay, so when you met in May with the right team,
No, no.
or with the incorrect team, I'm sorry, I take that back.
Correct.
And you said the cabinet, so the assistant superintendents, yourself.
Correct.
So at that point,
Our director, yes.
okay, at that point, the MEA president was not involved?
That's correct.
Okay, because I would assume that, safely assume, she would know the Unit A contract and the verbiage that's in there that states that it needs to come to school committee.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we made a mistake, clearly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Spadafora, Mr. Weldai. I think you're on mute, Mr. Weldai. There you go.
Win that. Okay. So I think building on what Ms. Spadafora said, I'm struggling with this one too, because it seems like what's happening is that we would be punishing Robin for doing the right thing when we didn't do the right thing. I have a hard time with the misinterpretation of the language. I mean, like I pulled it up, the very first line of the sabbatical clause says 1 semester's leave of absence at full pay or half pay for professional development through study may be granted by the Malden School Committee. Like it's in the first line. So it's really, really difficult to understand how something could be misinterpreted so badly. And then when it's brought up, still be misinterpreted. And then when it's asked by the teacher, I'm really struggling with the process that was gone through here, because I think that's what was left out of the request. Because I think Ms. Spadafora is right. 2 months is really unacceptable. I think if we were planning for this, you know, my gut is saying we can't afford this right now. And I'm thinking, well, if we had this request 2 months ago, prior to the start of the budget season, prior to when we were thinking about these things, it would be a completely different conversation in my mind. And so it 100% feels like we are going to be negatively impacting the professional development of an educator because of our own, and I shouldn't even say our here, I'll say because of our district, our district leadership's inaction or missteps. And that's what doesn't sit well with me. So those are my 2 cents.
All right, anybody else wishing to comment? Mr. Iovino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am troubled by this because I can't support it in light of where we are with our budget. There are so many moving pieces so far, and I fear there are more to come. I don't think that we're done with the cutting. I could be wrong, and hopefully I am. But if we grant this sabbatical, we're going to have to fund a full salary, and then we're going to have to hire a teacher to take this individual's place. And I think financially it's irresponsible at this point. It's unfortunate that the error was made, very unfortunate, but I can't support it.
All right, anybody else wishing to comment? Mr.
Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I cannot support this either. With the salary she'd be getting next year, we could actually hire 2 new teachers. And like Mr. Iovino said, it looks like down the road, we're gonna have to do some cutting. I don't think we're gonna get the money to have a level funded budget. So I'm also against this. And I think if you grant it to one person, next year, you're gonna have a whole slew of people that are gonna be looking for a sabbatical. So like I said, I'm against it.
Thank you, Mr. Froyo. Did I hear Mr. Greenspan? Were you?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just
ahead.
on some of the confusion, this language is probably 50 years old in the contract. And since ed reform in 1993, all personnel actions have been transferred away from the school committee to the superintendent of schools. So this language, unfortunately, was never updated because in my tenure in Malden, I can't remember it ever coming up. So we never updated it in the contract. When the superintendent brought it to my attention a second time, I gave the opinion that we should follow the language of the contract, even though it's archaic. And I had the superintendent convene the appropriate committee that made the recommendation, even though it was a little bit later than we would have liked.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Anybody else? We got a long agenda, so let's go to Mr. Weldai and then Ms. Spadafora.
I just think, to Howard's point, I think an important distinction, though, is that this is a budgetary request, so that should come to the school committee. And I understand that the contract language might be archaic. I mean, we've been going over these contracts for years, though, and you know, all of us at some point, especially the educators, have been on negotiating teams, and we've sat on both sides of these tables. And a budgetary request would come to the school committee, because in order to take a sabbatical, we'd have to fund the position. And in this case, it looks like it's half of a year, which again, would have been something we could have factored in for, to Lenny and John's points, had we been planning for this a couple months ago. So that's why I think I understand the archaic language piece, but it is still a budgetary decision, which would go, before the committee.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weldai. Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will keep this short and sweet. If this language is that archaic and 50 years old, I'm disappointed that it's included in a contract that is representing our teachers. And I think we need to do a better job when it comes time for negotiations and when we review these contracts to make sure that the verbiage is exactly represents exactly what we mean. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so any motions before us? So Soup, hearing none, do we just, Mr. Greenspan, do we just let that ride then, or do we need an affirmative?
I think you need a vote on the, you need a vote on the
I'll make a motion
recommendation
to
of
approve.
superintendent.
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Iovino,
Second.
what,
Motion.
what's
The motion is to approve the request of the sabbatical.
Oh, I thought you had a point from Mr. Weldai. Is that
Oh,
the-
no, I thought somebody was asking for a motion. I said I would make the motion.
Mr. Weldai, is that what you were doing?
I'll defer to Mr. Iovino.
Okay, motion to approve by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. Froyo. Is that correct?
Correct.
Any further questions? Everybody understands?
Just to clarify, a yes vote is to approve, a no vote is to reject the request.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, let's have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Drummey,
No.
Mr. Froyo,
No.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
No,
Ms. Luong,
No.
Mr. McCarthy,
No.
Ms. Spadafora,
No.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christenson,
No. What's the tally, Madam Clerk?
7-2.
7-2. All right, so Superintendent, you'll make the appropriate notification.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please let her know it was not for lack of effort. I thought she really did a great job putting a request together, and what she's working on is intriguing, but, just not in a position right now, so. All right, so I think that's it for the superintendent's report. Now we're going to go to subcommittee reports and discussions. First up, Mr. Iovino to tell us where we are regarding space and enrollment.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're still, we're at the 6,684 youngsters as of last Friday's attendance, which was the official attendance at the end of the year. We've picked up 149 youngsters, so we continue to be a fluid system. At this point, we have only 3 fewer students than we did last year. So the enrollment, although it has its ups and its downs, is fairly well consistent. With regard to the preschool, we are still working on that pending the requirements of reopening and what that's going to entail at the preschool level. So I can't give you any definitive answers there.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Iovino? Hearing none. Next up, Ms. Spadafora from the Budget Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Budget Subcommittee has been meeting weekly, with our last meeting being June 8th. Ms. Mertz presented additional information on a level funded budget proposal, and that included the ability to restore 7 positions to the budget, and making some additional cuts in operations and maintenance budget portion, allowing us to restore those 7 positions. We also met this evening for a public hearing in which we had numerous attendees. I was really happy to hear so many people come and speak in support of the budget, in support of the committee's work, in support of our superintendent, our finance manager, and all acknowledging how difficult this job has been for the past 2 months. And, you know, many spoke out in regards to the position in the high school that I think, you know, we can all, and I hope my colleagues agree with me, say that if the money is there in August or September, that this is a very important position and that we would absolutely look to fund any positions, especially social emotional adjustment counselors, you know, coming off of a pandemic and everything else that's going on right now. These are really important positions. And I know that when we sit down again, because we will be sitting down again, we'll be looking at where, if the money's there, we can bring these positions back. So, and finally, in that last meeting of June 8th, we did actually approve the level funded budget in subcommittee. So I know I have it under motions and resolutions to approve the budget. I don't know if we want to get to that right now.
Yeah, I think we will, unless there are any objections. Hearing none, continue, Ms. Spadafora. What was the vote of the subcommittee?
So the vote was unanimous across all. Everybody agreed that this really is our best case scenario, and I hope that we can roll into the start of the school year with this level funded budget. I think we're all really hopeful that our state delegation holds true in pushing to fund education right now, because this is where it's mostly needed. So this is definitely, I apologize for my barking dog.
Yes vote or a no vote?
It's 2 cents.
I think he's a yes vote because he wants to fund the schools.
All right.
So I would like to make a motion that we approve and adopt the level funded budget presented to us for fiscal year 2021.
Second.
All right, seconded by Mr. Iovino. Let's take questions. Everybody clear? Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to echo what Ms. Spadafora said, but also say for her first time leading the budget subcommittee, I think Jen and Tony did a phenomenal job guiding us through this process, especially because I think for Ms. Spadafora, she was supposed to be leading the budget subcommittee in the year of Student Opportunity Act, and this is very different. And I think she did it with a lot of grace and strategy, which was really great to see. And just to quickly echo what she said again, because I really do appreciate, I think it was Michael, Kayla, Chris, and Elizabeth from the high school spoke at the public forum earlier. And, you know, I think it's very important for me, at least, so that they know that the biggest priority for us was making sure that people who are currently employed stay employed. And so, you know, we really focused in on the positions that were open, so things that needed to be filled but weren't yet filled. And so, you know, none of us want to get rid of any social emotional support for our students. I think we've advocated for quite the opposite. But you know, priority for us in that particular position was keeping someone else who's already working here with us and with our kids. And so when we hopefully see more funding coming in, I know that's the very top of the priority list, and your advocacy is doing nothing but help strengthening that and helping get us there. So thank you for that.
Great. Anybody else? Just, it's worth mentioning one more time from the chair that the reason we're able to even be in this position tonight is, again, thanks to Tony Mertz, Ron Hogan, and Chuck Ranigan. I think you've probably heard over the years there's always been this city-school dichotomy, but that hasn't been the case since these three started working together. So I want to make sure that they're publicly acknowledged for their efforts. So we have Ms. Spadafora's motion. It was seconded by Mr. Iovino. Ms. Spadafora, do you want to put the dollar amount on there, or Mr. Greenspan, do we need to do that for the motion?
I would recommend that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Oh, I had it right in front of me and I don't, Ms. Martz, can you please remind me what the dollar amount for level funded is? I know it's 74.2 million.
For 2,150,000.
Yep, 74,200,150.
All right, so there you have it. There's the motion, seconded by Mr. Iovino. Final for questions. Let's have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Drummey,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christensen.
Yes. All right, there you have it. Carries unanimously. Again, hats off to Ms. Spadafora and the rest of the Budget Subcommittee. We should adjourn at this point, but we must go on. Let's see. So let's go to motions and resolutions. We just dispensed with the FY21 budget. Now let's go to the transportation contract, where we'll once again hear from Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when this pandemic first hit back in March, we received guidance from DESE in regards to numerous things, paying employees, vendor contracts. One of those was our transportation contract, and it did take a bit for us to get guidance from DESE. And when we did, they advised that we pay our transportation companies at a reduced rate to just make sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Greenspan, because I know you worked extensively on understanding this legislation, that we can, maintain our commitment with our transportation provider, make sure that they're going to be up and able, but at a reduced rate. So we have an amendment to our contract with NRT in which Mr. Greenspan has worked on. And for us to be able to provide transportation, we need to approve this contract before, I believe it's June 30th, because we do have some districts, our out-of-district students that will be actually attending extended school year. We need to make sure that we're able to provide transportation and get these payments made.
All right, so Ms. Spadafora, is that a motion?
So I'll make a motion to approve the contract as is, and if I need to put I don't have a dollar amount, but the contract is at a, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Martz, 78% of the regularly monthly invoice.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Seconded by, it looks like Ms. Luong. Is that you seconding? Seconded by Ms. Luong. Questions of Ms. Spadafora? Mr. Iovino.
Just a quick clarification, Mr. Chairman. This is an amendment and it is not an automatic contract extension. Is that correct?
Yes, right, Ms.
Thank you.
Spadafora? Yep.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, other questions? Hearing none. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummey,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christensen.
Yes. Carries unanimously. Maybe we have to put more motions under Ms. Spadafora. All right, next up, school improvement plans. We'll hear from Mr. Iovino about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I would like to put a motion on the floor to accept the school improvement plans and have the committee vote their approval for them. These school improvement plans reflect a lot of thoughtfulness, insightful work that all of our principals and individual school councils and administrators have done. And all of this in addition to the added responsibility that was created by this unforeseen pandemic that we're all living through. The teachers and the administrators had to create an educationally positive experience for remote learning amid all of the moving pieces that this pandemic brought about. I think that the work that they have done, that the teachers and the administrators have done is evident in the school improvement plans. And I would put that motion forward for committee approval.
All right, let's see if we can get you a second. Anybody want to second that motion? Seconded by Mr. Spadafora, I believe. Now let's get to some questions. Everybody clear? You all have the information. I think we're good. Seeing no lights. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to the motion? Carries unanimously. Now, Mr. Weldai, resolution affirming Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd like to just give a special thank you to both you and the MEA President, Deb Gesualdo. We were looking to do something tonight, especially whereas at our last meeting we spoke on behalf of the Asian American population here in Malden. And Deb Gesualdo really drove and crafted this resolution, and working with her, we made a few tweaks. And I think it came out as strong as it could be to show what we have already affirmed as a committee before, and we can do so again in writing. And I think just very quickly, I won't read the whole thing, but I'll just read the be it resolved part for the public. So it says, be it resolved that the Malden Public Schools works to strengthen its bond with our community, bring the community into our schools, and strengthen schools as centers of support. Further, be it resolved that the Malden Public Schools will continue to work actively to recruit, hire, support, and retain educators of color. Be it further resolved that the MPS will work through an equity lens to continue to examine curriculum and resources being taught under Mass State frameworks to infuse culturally responsive, relevant, and appropriate texts, authors, and perspectives into our work with our students, and that the MPS will be a place for the practice of equity, for the building of understanding, and for the active engagement of all in creating pathways to freedom and justice for all people. So that's the resolution affirming that Black Lives Matter.
All right, very good. So motion by Mr. Weldai. Is there a second? I think I saw
Second.
Mr. McCarthy. So any questions on it? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Now we're going to stay with Mr. Weldai, who will be joined by Mr. Drummey on a COVID-19 state funding resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really do have to give props to Mr. Drummey on this one as the driving force. We received this from Councillor Crowe actually a couple of weeks ago, and coincidentally, then I think a week or two later, we heard from a member of the Amherst School Committee who was also piloting this. And I think as of today, there are 40 or so districts across Massachusetts who've already approved this, sent it to their legislature. And it's really just a resolution saying that we're not going to accept an unfunded mandate, and any COVID-related expenses should be covered and helped by the state.
All right, Mr. Drummey, you want to add anything?
No, I mean, it just makes sense. We're already hurting, and they expect us to add this on top of what we already deal with. And all the school committees are adamant about this. And by the time this is done, I think all of them will have passed the resolution. So again, I think it's a good thing, and we should go forward with it.
All right, Mr. Weldai said he wants to defer to you on the making of the motion. So Mr. Drummey makes it.
Okay.
Mr. Weldai second. Any questions on it? Do you want to read just a portion of it?
Sure. We said, whereas the state cannot expect mandatory COVID-19 safety guidelines to be followed without ensuring that each school district has the funds required to implement these guidelines. Therefore, the state must guarantee that every school district gets full reimbursement for whatever COVID-19 expenses are required in order to follow state mandates. We must ensure that a statewide school reopening is safe, responsible, and equitable.
All right, there you have it, everyone. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. Next up, Ms. Luong. Motion for a special education audit of services delivered to all special education students in 2019-2020. Ms. Luong.
Yes, so my concern has been, though we have tried to deliver the best we could during the current circumstances, I'm really concerned that we do have some special ed children that in turn were not able to receive their services. And I think that there's just been some inconsistency across the district. We have one family that, one kid got them and one didn't in terms of services. We have one family that put their petition in for services to receive services to begin with and still haven't had any IEP meeting to discuss what their testing that was done early in the year looks like. So I think to prevent us from having children that are falling through the cracks deeply, I just think that we need to start this summer with doing a complete audit of our special ed services per student. What exactly did they receive? And what they did not. And we can't just go with what, people say they got. I think we really need to poll the parents, and we really need to see from the parent standpoint exactly what their child got and what they did not, what they received and what they didn't.
And you're hoping for that information to be forwarded back to us in September?
Correct. The first meeting our first meeting, September, October, whenever that can, that report. And then when we get that report, we can see what it looks like. And then we can come back and say, okay, what's the plan? So I'd like to see a report and then a plan for implementation, like how, because we're clearly going to see some deficits. So how do we fix that to the best of our ability without increasing our budget?
Very good. So, Ms. Luong, you're putting that in the form of a motion?
Correct. So I make a motion that we do a special ed audit for all special education students to find out exactly what's been delivered and what has not been delivered.
All right, seconded by Mr. McCarthy for purposes of discussion. So just from the chair superintendent, is this something that you can pull together?
Yes, we'll be looking at doing that this summer.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Mr. Iovino, then Mr. Weldai.
It's just a minor question, Mr. Chairman, but was a request made to Mr. Wood, Michael Wood, that for this audit? I mean, it seemed to me if you make a request and it isn't acted upon, then it comes before the committee. But was it acted upon, I guess? Did he agree to do this? I can't imagine him not agreeing to it, but did he agree to do that? Because I'm not sure it belongs in the form of a that's just a procedural question, that's all. Nothing more.
So initially, when this was brought to Mr. Wood's attention, I did reference a particular family. He got back to me to say that, oh no, in fact, that both children in the family did receive services, and he was assured that that was correct information. And in return, it was not correct information. So my concern, quite bluntly, is that we're getting inconsistencies across the district. I think the teachers, the special education teachers, I think that they do just an invaluable service for us and for the children. I think this really stands from an administrative standpoint. And I think that we just need to make sure that what's being done from the assistant superintendent, Michael Woods, on down to his staff is actually being delivered correctly. That's my concern. And I think doing this initially, I had only asked for a spot check. I'm now really feel strongly that we need to do a full review of our special ed services and what's being delivered.
All right, Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that that I fully support this. I actually owe Ms. Luong a debt of gratitude. She has been facilitating, I think, a lot of communication between parents who are looking for help and resources and making sure that, I think she's been helping folks in all of our wards, not just her own ward, and has managed to expose a lot of communication flaws, I think, in the process. So I'm thankful that she took this on and fully supportive.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Spadafora.
Thank you very much. And I echo what Mr. Weldai said, and I think it's imperative really that we look at everything within our special education. Please. I'm so sorry. It's just chaos in my house. Apologies. But what I really want to actually get at is we've actually discussed this numerous times about out of district costs. And I think this is really the time for us to look at the services that we are providing, because the last thing we want to do is have families upset with the services or lack thereof, if that's happening, and want to push for out of district placements that's going to cost the district a lot of money. And not only money, we talk about faith and idea and having students educated in the city that they live in with the peers that they go to school with. So I think it's really imperative that we look at this audit at objective to make sure that we're providing the services, and also what can we do better to ensure that the students we have are being educated in our city. So I fully support this.
All right, there you have it, everyone. Any other questions?
I actually wanted to bring up, I want to be really clear on what I expect of an audit. And what I do not expect is to have I don't mind if it's a survey, but it needs to be detailed as such that there gives a clear definition of what these parents are asked. I also want to prevent that we only get a 30% response from this audit. It needs to be a full-scale audit down to each family. I just want to reiterate that exactly what I'm talking about. That's
Why don't we have our superintendent just make sure he's in touch with you over the summer, so we just don't have it come back in September and we have to start over on how it was composed and all that. So we'll have him work with you then, Ms. Luong. All right. So motion's been made, seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed to it? All right, that carries unanimously. Finally, under motions and resolutions, school committee meetings for 2020, 2021. I think everybody has seen the dates.
Yep.
All right. We'll take a motion then, I guess, to approve.
Move the motion.
By Mr. Spadafora. All those in favor say aye.
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 Be opposed? The ayes have it. That carries unanimously. So, Madam Clerk, can we get those dates up on the website? Okay, so we'll do that forthwith.
Maybe we'll be in person.
Yes, right. I forgot about that. So we have 3 items left. Next is personal privilege, followed by a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiations. And we may or may not act on what's taken up in executive session, then we would move. So let's take up points of personal privilege. Before we do, I'm going to do something that I normally wouldn't and start off by recognizing and thanking our student representative, Batul Chawuki, who I thought for sure would not be here tonight. But not only is she here for roll call, but she stayed for the entire meeting.
God bless her.
Thank you, Batul, and for everything you've done for the school committee and for the Malden Public Schools. You are why hope remains.
Thank you so much.
All right, now let's take some points of personal privilege. Who wants to go first? Mr. Iovino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say a heartfelt debt of gratitude we owe, this committee owes, to all of our families, all of our students, and especially to our teachers and our administrators for getting through what is something that nobody could ever have had a crystal ball to see, and something I never thought in my lifetime I would experience, or any of us would experience. They did wonderful service, and they did to the best of their ability, and I think they need a heartfelt congratulations. And I want everybody to have a safe and happy summer. Above all, safety.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Iovino. Next up, Mr. McCarthy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. like Mr. Iovino said, I just wanted to wish all the families in the Malden Public Schools a happy summer. The students definitely deserve it. The families deserve it after this pandemic. We're still in the middle of it, so I just wanted to wish everyone a happy, healthy summer, and we'll get through this. Thank you very much.
Ms. Luong.
Yes, I just wanted to take a moment to just say my profound thanks as a parent for the amazing job that was done at the high school. I had a freshman and a senior. So my senior said to me, you know, I had no prom. We have no barbecue. The parade was fabulous. And I just felt really good that we're having a graduation. She felt appreciated. She felt like you missed out on a few things, but she really felt appreciated by the amount of staff that reached out to her during the pandemic. And as well for my freshman, she could have got a little lost in the shuffle. So the work that they had done, as well as the work of the rest of the K-8 staff and administration, you know, my heartfelt thank you, and just a safe summer for everybody.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ms. Luong. Let's see, any others? If not, we're going to entertain a motion to go into executive session. Ms. Spadafora, then Mr. Weldai, then Mr. Drummey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I'd like to thank all of our principals that have taken the time opening up the schools, making sure kids got all of their items from their lockers, their instruments. I mean, it was such an effort that was, from what I witnessed, very smooth. So I'm just grateful for all the effort that was put in. On top of that, our PTOs actually have been working really behind the scenes. When I say behind the scenes, it's because I only see them online right now, but they're still pushing and they're doing fantastic jobs. They're still the Bay State textiles. They're still pulling in money for our students. And I'm so appreciative of all their hard work that they've done, even while we're not in school. Ron Janowitz, all I can say is I hope that when it comes to the hiring process, the bar is set so high. I'm really hopeful that we can at least meet at 75%, because there's nobody like Mr. J. So I just hope that we can get somebody close. And then I just wanted to say a personal thank you, because we did approve that budget, to the budget subcommittee for working with me as a new chair. This is the first time I've chaired any subcommittee in my 2.5 years now. And I couldn't have done it without all of those that sat there up there with me when I made a mistake, maybe on calling the meeting to adjourn or whatever. It was a learning experience, and I couldn't have done it without all of you there. And the superintendent and Ms. Mertz actually made it extremely easy to work with and coordinate with and be there at the drop of a dime for a phone call. So that was my personal thank you. And lastly, to our clerk, Ms. Dory, who has been working behind the scenes during this whole pandemic. And I know I email her 30 bazillion times a week for whatever it may be. And she is always there for a phone call, to answer an email. And I just wanted to give her a huge thanks for everything during this time. And she's fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spadafora. Mr. Weldai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think just echoing what a lot of folks have already said so far, I just wanted to say thank you and congratulations. I think I want to say to the whole community, because I think for the first time, parents, teachers, students, we all can sort of empathize in the fact that we had to learn something completely new in the drop of a dime, be it teachers who had never used specific types of technology. They were going on Google, they were mailing things to their kids, parents who didn't, had to navigate what that was going to look like at home, and students who had to sort of adjust their expectations of reality too. And I think hopefully you take some time this summer to take care of you and your mental health, and make sure that you sort of readjust and put yourself in a mindset where, we've shifted, and that's scary, and what you did was heroic. And we are very appreciative to the educators, to the parents, to the kids, for everything that you were able to do this year in such a short amount of time. So thank you to you. Congratulations to our graduates, especially Ved and Jenna. And have a safe summer. And we're going to miss on a lot of those yearly summer traditions that I think we're so used to here in Malden. So hopefully we'll see each other from a distance out and about around town.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Weldai. Mr. Drummey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just again, to reiterate what everybody has said, Malden public staff, school staff has done a heck of a job considering what we've been through this year. I mean, with the teachers, I mean, even got my wife to learn how to use a computer. I'm wicked impressed with that. I mean, really. So really, all joking aside, they've done a great job. The kids, they came through like troopers. They looked at it with a little adversity and said, nah, I'm going to do this. And they did. And we got the graduation coming up, and that'll be a great thing. And I just want to say, Ron Janowitz, I'm sorry I missed last year's. And just going to that Pathways presentation, I don't want to call it graduation because they do graduate. Listen to the kids talk about him. They really do love the man. And like Jen said, he's set the bar. This is going to be, even 75 might be kind of tough. But good luck to him. And then to Peter Dolan, too, who's also leaving. And everybody, please have a safe summer. I want to see y'all back in September, please. Thank you.
Drummey. All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Froyo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to say to Ron Janowitz, have a healthy and enjoyable summer. You've certainly earned it. I worked with him at the high school, and I know the type of job he did. And all the students, be safe this summer. Have a good summer.
All right, thank you, Mr. Froyo. Anybody else? All right, so we'll now entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of contract negotiations.
Motion.
It was to be adopted.
Second.
Or may not come back out to approve what we discussed in executive session. Regardless, we will then move adjournment in honor of our student representative.
Amen.
All right.
Make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Iovino, seconded by Mr. Drummey. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummey,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christenson.
Yes. Carries unanimously. We will now go into executive session.
Hey, Adam. You there?
Let's see, we're missing.
Can hear you, Lenny, but we can't see you.
You can't see me? Good Lord.
No.
You lucky people. Oh, there I am.
There he is.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Just waiting on Mr. Froyo.
Oh.
All right, Mr. Froyo, there you are. So now we'll entertain any motions
Motion.
by Mr. Iovino.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve for the Malden Public Schools Administrative Chapter of SEIU Local 888, a 1-year increase in salary of 2% effective July 1st, 2019, up through June 30th, 2020, and which shall remain in effect until a successor agreement has been executed.
Second by Mr. McCarthy. Any questions? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Drummey,
Yes.
Mr. Froyo,
Yes.
Mr. Gray,
Yes.
Mr. Iovino,
Yes.
Ms. Luong,
Yes.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Spadafora,
Yes.
Mr. Weldai,
Yes.
Mayor Christenson.
Yes. That carries unanimously. Now we'll entertain a motion to adjourn in honor of our student representative, Ms. Spadafora,
Motion.
seconded by Mr. Iovino. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Last chance.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Bye-bye.
Good summer, folks. Take care.
Have a
Take
good
care.
summer, everybody.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.